Everyone has to prove their own identity. But that's part of why the asexual umbrella is so broad and we get so many different experiences. It does not mean celibacy or abstinence, so an asexual may certainly decide to be both of those things.
You can be like sex, like someone likes cake but don't need it to live.
Yep. And asexuals range from sex repulsed, who want nothing to do with sex and don't want to even consider it, to very sex positive and may even engage in sex, so again has no need for it, through all of the demisexual shades, and I do ID as demisexual myself. And current estimates say that asexuals are about 1% of the population, which is not big, but given the number of people there are, that's a lot of people.
There is the meme that we could take over Denmark.
We could. I don't want to run a country though.
We need too much work.
I think we would populate a lot.
The nice thing about all the queer identities is we don't have to. All the cishet people keep having kids who are queers. Yeah, we just give them a welcoming face. So, brief little history of asexuality. As soon as we decided to make sexual categories, people started being like, I don't belong in any of those boxes. And we started trying to figure out what we wanted to call asexuality. Way back in 1869, when we were starting to see sodomy laws and definitions of homosexuality, Carl Maria Kurtbenny coined the term monosexuality for people who have no desire for sexual intimacy with others, and he was actually using that to try to argue against sodomy laws. Magnus Hirschfeld is probably a familiar name to some of you guys, and he coined the term anesthesia sexual for people who don't desire sexual contact, and it's kind of an amazing term. Who here has heard of Hirschfeld? Oh, fewer than I thought. Okay. Yeah, he did a lot of sexuality research in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
He was a German Jew.
He was a German Jew. A lot of the very famous images of book burnings were his work. Almost all of his research was lost because the Nazis destroyed it. Yeah. But he was a pretty cool guy. Emma Tross was another sexologist and social reformer, and she coined the term asensuality and said that she was asexual back in 1897. And then I wanted to throw the Reverend Carl Schlegel on. I cannot pronounce German names, I'm sorry. Schlegel, thank you. Just to show that the church doesn't have to be aggressive to queer people, it just chooses to be so. Who here's familiar with Kinsey's work? More? Alright. Again, very famous sex researcher, and working back in the 30s and 40s, he had estimated asexuality as 1.5% in the male population and 19% in the female population. These are probably wildly off because, again, he's doing interviews with people, and he would be the first to tell you that people are lying to him. And
Yeah, how many of that is just women who didn't want to sleep with it?
But here's the thing, it at least shows that it exists, and at least, yes, you can be off the Kinsey scale, that is a valid Kinsey scale result. It's separate from zero.
And then actually one of the first places we see it in print outside of these sexologist research is the Satanic Bible. Back in 1969, it's advocating for asexuals to have the freedom to not have sex.
Dang, Satan, you're up and up, hold on.
And then Lisa Orlando published the Asexual Manifesto in 1972 and was one of the people to really push the term amatonormativity, the assumption that all people will desire sex and romance in order to have a fulfilling life, which is just not true on either end. If anyone was here at our non-binary panel, you heard the name Jim Sinclair. They are an autism, non-binary rights, and asexual rights activist who has been doing this for a very long time. They were on talk shows in 1989. They had to use an alias in order to protect themselves, especially where they are neurodivergent. But they've been trying to let people know about asexuality for a very long time, that it's not a defect, it's just the way some people are. And there is a lot of overlap between the non-binary, the autistic, and the asexual spectrum.
In Canada, there is a type of a type of frozen yogurt that is 3 types of vanilla, and it has three aces on it, and I'm just like, I know exactly who this refers to. There's one of my friends who actually is on another panel right now, who I just call it their ice cream soda.
Yeah. But where we really started seeing more public recognition is with the internet. We could find each other and we could talk to each other. And back in 2001, David J. started AVEN, Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network. It's still online. It's the longest running and one of the most popular sites to go to for information about asexuality. Jay has been interviewed a lot. He kind of became the voice and face of the movement for a while. He's still doing work. He's shifted his focus a little bit. He's working more now to advocate for legal recognitions of non-traditional families because he is raising children with a couple. He's not a sexual partner for them, but he is a parent to their children, and it's pretty cool. In 2002, New York passed the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act, and it's still the only legislative document in the world that mentions asexual people and promises us not to be discriminated against, which is a good dream.
So I will say, California passed a recent law that, while it does not specifically say it does affect asexual.
It does. If anyone's not familiar with it, California very recently passed a law where anybody can take family and medical leave for any person that they designate as family. It does not have to have a blood or marriage relationship. You don't have to prove it to your employer. It's a huge step forward for non-traditional families, and corporations fought it tooth and nail because then anyone can take leave to help anyone, and it's like, yes, you understand the premise.
Imagine that.
Congratulations.
We live in a society.
Right.
But they would rather be the nuclear family is very useful for capitalism.
Nuclear families, though, in this economy?
Which brings us to the other half of the equation, aromanticism. So defined as an individual lacking in romantic desire. Same caveats as asexuality, trying to define something by a lack. Real messy. But aromantic people can have any sexual orientation. You can be aromantic gay, straight, bisexual, or aromantic asexual, often abbreviated as aro-ace, which is what most people think of. And having romantic connections and attraction is not associated with a desire to maintain friendships or other relationships. Aromantic people face a lot of stigma about that. You just don't know how to make bonds with people, and it's like, no, romantic bonds are something different.
Out of curiosity, how many people identify as aromantic?
And how many people identify as airways? Yes, we are here for all the, and all the,
It's a big umbrella. Everybody's welcome under it. We only get into trouble when we start throwing stones at each other. There's enough people who want to throw stones at all of us.
Also, Arab people can be in relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
they're married. Well, they have.
Yes, I am married, and I was so happy when I found Arrow Ace. I identified as very strictly Arrow Ace until I got married. And it's like, well, maybe it's more complicated. I don't know.
It is inside the spectrum.
That's very fair. Is a newer concept. So we really started seeing Aromanticism off of internet groups. The first one was the Haven for the Human Amoeba, which is an amazing name. Props to whoever made that. And then the AVEN boards, the Asexuality Visibility Network. People were using the terms asexual to describe themselves when they didn't want any kind of romantic relationship. And then that evolved into aromantic. As we said, the two labels do not have to co-occur, though they can. But you know, no inter-queer community gatekeeping. Let people ID how they want to ID. Doesn't hurt anyone. Let people change their IDs. Doesn't hurt anyone.
It's okay if it's not a phase, it's okay if it is.
Yeah.
So is teenager. It's a teenager.
I've been most of the labels.
The only thing that annoys me is people who can't take my relationships and go to the point and they're like, I must be ace then.
There's a manga for that.
There is a manga for that.
It's called
Please don't identify as something just because you can't get someone.
Yeah.
It's called Moving to You. We'll get into it.
Some places where we may have had aromantic people, though again, not entirely clear because it is a newer term. So looking back into history and trying to figure out who may have been aromantic. The Golden Orchid Society is wild. If you're interested in Chinese history at all, they are really cool. It was women who worked in the silk production business, and basically you married your guild, and you didn't have to have a man involved in your life, which was a huge thing in China, and it was this very women-dominated society, women-only society. So there were probably asexual and aromantic people who looked at that and looked at marriage and went, I want that.
I mean, you see also a lot of religious orders in the Western side of things.
Spinsters in Europe were women who earned their own wages from spinning and thus could afford to be unmarried, and probably had a higher percentage of asexual and aromantic people because options other than marriage. And then Boston marriages were women living together, and who knows what each of them was. Could have been lesbian, could have been just financial, could have been queer platonic. Given heteronormativity, finding historical examples of asexual and aromantic main characters is hard because they definitely wouldn't have self-ID'd as that. We do have a lot of characters that resonate with the Arrow Ace community. And a lot of them were written in a neurodivergent manner, and the triple threat here. And a lot of them do have their ace characteristics as othering, which isn't always a bad thing. I don't know. I don't mind being a dragon. I get why it's good to have human characters who are Arrow Ace, but also I do love our historical predecessors.
I mean, not always othering outlapping your roots. Eyebrow egg, eyebrow. Latest reference for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, this guy down here, Antarella, the leader of the revolution, in Les Mis, which is not the French Revolution. It's a different revolution. He's amazing. Definitely reads his Arrow Ace, which is really funny coming from the man who had so much sex that the sex workers mourned his death. The first time we got asexual characters who used the word asexual in anything mainstream was on House. It's about what you expect from House.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, but they did use the term, so it introduced the term to a wider audience.
I mean, also, see also, plus side, showing a less known form of hermaphrodism. That's not the right term. Intersex, sorry. Sorry, less common form of intersex. That side, House constantly calls him son after her son.
Yeah.
Your son, etc. Just because testosterone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah,
It's not good.
House was insulting to everybody, but that doesn't mean it still wasn't insulting.
He does discriminate.
It's true.
He's just an ass, and he's shown that is what the character is. Like,
He hates everybody equally.
Exactly.
It's a metal drama, basically.
I'm not misgendering you because I hate you specifically. I just hate everybody.
Yeah. There's no discrimination. It's just, he's an asshole.
I mean, I understand why it was so popular. I also understand why pretty much every marginalized group that it dealt with was like, did you have to?
You got some things wrong here.
Yeah.
I've got notes.
It's like, being representing us, sometimes you know you're wrong.
You tried to get into the ballpark that you missed.
On the other hand, there is a general way of, like, oftentimes, any marginalized group will go from villain to comedic character to accepted. Like, look at the queer community and how we have a lot more queer-coded villains than we had things like Will and Grace and such that were making it comedic, and now you just have characters that are. It doesn't mean you don't have the other two as well, but we're more likely to have it there because it goes to that progression. And a lot of, there's a lot of groups who have gone through that general progression. So some representation is better than none, but it's the first step, and it's a very uncomfortable first step, but it is the first step in getting it.
You gotta have those stepping stones, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're really eager to step up to the next step.
It's true.
High Maintenance and Faking It both had some ace characters. Probably the character that most people in mainstream audiences think of is Varys when they think of an ace character. And at least Varys does explicitly say that he wasn't interested in sex before he became a eunuch. He's definitely not interested in sex now. So. Wow. And most of our ace rep is in specfic, which is not uncommon. Specfic tends to be a lot more welcoming to queer characters in general, and especially some of the smaller queer labels. Shadowhunters, Raphael Santiago actually gets to use the word, which isn't true for all specfic, just because if it's in a secondary world, our labels don't always exist. Legends of Tomorrow, The Imperfects. Comics were a little bit slower, which is actually the opposite of how most of the other queer rep came about. Jughead from Archie's has canonically been written as just not interested in romance and sex and laughing at everybody else since his inception. That was his character concept.
And it was codified about 10 years ago?
Yeah, 2016, it made it into the comics.
And that had a great line about poor Archie is so girl Grace, he can't even tie his shoes.
At least they just turned face.
Yeah. was unfortunately cut from Riverdale over protests from the fans and the actors. The Riverdale did give us a poly ending, like a canonical poly ending, so I'll forgive it a lot.
We're gonna not have that.
It's true. They're a CW show, what do we expect? And then Connor Hawke, Green Arrow's son, is canonically Ace, and I'm going to give just a 60-second digression that it's just hilarious that Chuck Dixon is so homophobic that he accidentally turned 4 different DC characters queer, including Connor Hawke.
Self-report.
Like, because he was trying to write Connor as straight, but Connor does, like, he's supposedly having sex, but he still has all his clothes on. It's like, sir, do you know how this works? And then later writers were just like, clearly this poor man is just Ace and we need to run with
They
it.
forgot to read the player's manual.
Gwenpool is Ace, and then Nadia Van Dyne and Yelena Belova are both Word of God Ace, according to DC, but it hasn't actually ended up in the comics. If anyone likes novels, there's some really good Ace novels. I'm happy to come back to the slide and talk about it later. We'll get to the Japanese stuff first. Aromantic, it doesn't exist, except very, very rarely. Caduceus plays canonically asexual aromantic in Critical Role, and he's amazing.
Yes.
Just the best.
Just the best in the new Mighty Nine special. Yes, I need to watch more Dimension 20, but I had heard that in Fantasy High we get an Ace Arrow.
Free something alternative.
It gets even more complicated when we're trying to put labels on historical figures from a country that has a very different understanding of sexuality and romanticism than we do. Prior to the Meiji Restoration, Japan did not use anything approaching our concepts of gay, straight. You didn't have a sexuality, you had roles to perform for your family, and what you did outside of that was totally fine. Homosexuality has only been illegal in Japan for 10 years, right around the Meiji Restoration, and that was used very specifically to attack the samurai class, who had a very long history of homosexuality as part of their culture. But otherwise, you were allowed to be queer. You just
Be queer over there.
You were queer after you had your family, after you took care of whatever other societal function you were supposed to have. And then the Meiji Restoration happened, and the Japanese government decided they wanted to be as Western as possible, as quickly as possible, because they felt like Japan had fallen behind the rest of the world, and it started to change.
Current asexual representation is pretty cool. Koisenu Futari is a drama that came out like a couple of years ago, and it is about an aro ace man and an aro ace woman who decide to become like housemates and build their own family from the ground up. They actually have a sexual third, not an asexual third, a sexual third in their dynamic, and it is amazing, and it is a really comprehensive deep dive into an aro ace experience, and they experience it in 2 very different ways.
They actually fill out a survey in one, like, the guy who's been running a blog about being aro ace, and that is how the girl comes across the terms, and then meets the guy who's like, we can build a family together. But he has a survey, and he has her fill it out, and he's filled it out as well, and their answers are different. Their experiences of being aro ace are quite different. What they like, one of them is much more touch-averse than the other, for example. And they go over that. They go into that. In one episode, they go further with this. Episode 6 has an aro ace meetup happening, and it is it is like a 5-minute, very special episode type thing, but it's so good because you just get to briefly meet all these different people who are experiencing, who have extremely different experiences of being Arrow or Ace or both. One of the characters just says he's met the love of his life. He identifies as Ace but not Arrow. There's a couple who are girlfriends but are living apart from each other because they find that more comfortable. And you just hear these little snippets of lives that are just showing that there's so much more out there than what these two are experiencing in their family without romance.
It's a big umbrella under the asexual and aromantic terms.
Yeah, the show is very fluffy and very good.
It's so good.
Moving to you. So the author actually set out, like, they were supposed to write a Yuri, and instead they wrote this big deep dive on being asexual and identity grieving and the faces that we show the world versus like what we feel inside.
It's so good, and like when she was like, yeah, I wrote this on invitation, they just wanted me to write a cute Yuri, I'm like, how did you get here from there?
Yeah, so the main character is asexual, probably closer to the demisexual part, although they never actually explicitly say that. She's always wanted to have a romance, but she just does not have that spark. She does not have that ability to like just fall in love, even though she very much desires it. But she meets another girl who is basically, it was not interested in romance, but is interested in the idea of a relationship. So they start dating just because, why not? And their relationship is very interesting because of what they consider like intimate and how their feelings grow and change, even though they kind of both want it to be the same, at least at first. And there's an amazing conversation between her, who is definitely on the demi spectrum for both sexuality and romanticism, with a boy who is canonically completely Arrow Ace, not interested in either of those. And because she's having some relationship problems, she does do the thing that you were complaining about earlier, where it's like, oh, maybe I'll just be like you and does not have any relationships at all. And he says, no, you can't do that. We're on different sides of this fence, they say as they're in a baseball pitching batting cage.
It's a really good conversation because Koito is really struggling with, she thought she was asexual, and then she found a relationship where that's okay, but now her feelings have changed and she'd like something more. She thought she was Arrow Ace, and now she's like, maybe I am demi-romantic, but then that makes it complicated because then I have to have conversations, so maybe I can just pretend I'm really strongly Arrow Ace like you, and he's like, that's not going to solve your problems. Communication is really hard, especially when you're a high schooler, and your love interest is grieving the death of their sister and trying to become their sister. Yeah.
Wow.
Lots of communication needs to happen. And it does, and it's really good.
It's very sweet. Highly recommend. There is an anime and a manga. The anime only covers about the first half of the story, and season 2 is not going to happen. At least it hasn't going to happen yet. So we're going to need to the second half of the story, you can read the manga for that. It's very
keep our hopes up. Fruits Basket exists.
Right?
It's true. Another thing that's tangential to the topic of this, but it's really neat, is they find a teacher who is queer and in a long-term relationship and mentors them. And it's really nice seeing that intergenerational solidarity. It's really nice, and I feel like we don't see that enough with the older generation of queer characters getting to help the younger.
I want to be a wall.
It's so good. A wall. Yep, I want to be a wall.
Yeah, a closeted asexual woman marries a closeted gay man to act as beards for each other.
She's a Hiroshi.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's very sweet. Her relationship, she's the asexual, and I think it's also aromantic, although they don't use that word. It's very clear that she's both, though. And the way that they kind of set up their dynamic, they kind of met through an arranged marriage situation. Like, they weren't necessarily going to get married, but they were meeting each other, and they were both like, we don't want to be dating other people. And so they're like, let's not date together.
The family matchmaker put them together, and they were like, oh, this is going to be terrible. And then they're both just like, I don't want to date. I don't want to date. Let's not date together.
So it's very sweet. The gay man does have a crush on his like childhood best friend, and she is very supportive of like, yeah, you should go for it, sort of thing. And it's very nice. It dives into like her feelings about like why she's into BL and why she finds like that escapism appealing versus like other genres. And her husband does end up having like, he's very supportive of the BL, by the way, and he's like, I should read it too, and she's like, no, you shouldn't read that.
The exact opposite of what you play.
Yes. And the husband actually has a conversation with another gay man about the boys' love genre, and about how, it can be problematic. Is it for straight women? Is it for gay men? It's hard to tell sometimes, and your level of comfort with the subject is going to be different, and it's just like, I was not expecting any amount of depth to this, and I am surprised by the amount of nuance that we are going into with this premise.
There's 2 volumes. So far, both are available in English. I really hope we're getting more, because there's definitely set up for more, and it's really good. And she canonically uses the word asexual for herself, which is so nice.
It's going to be made a cockblock, but if they don't,
I think Our Son is Gay is really good for looking at queerness in Japan at the moment. It's from the point of view of a mom of these 2 kids. One's in high school, one's in middle school. She's pretty sure her older son is gay, because
he doesn't want to use the word,
he
but
won't come out he's afraid to come out to anybody. But
he's really bad at lying.
He's really bad at lying.
He's really bad at
He's gay. So she's trying
maybe I'll have a boyfriend, like girlfriend like that one.
Yeah. It's so cute. But because she figures out her son's gay, she notices all the microaggressions that gay people in Japan face all the time, and her husband is trying to figure out how to politely say this, like, regular Japanese homophobic. Like, he's not super homophobic, but he holds most of the stereotypical Japanese male views of homosexuality. She's constantly like, are you sure you feel that way, husband? Are you sure that maybe we should examine this?
Somebody like have something, if I'm not mistaken, in Japanese culture, especially in that like UK area, or a very old era, they had more of a, what happens if people's home is our business?
Oh, very much prior to the Meiji Restoration, that was it. As long as you had your wife and your children, especially men, you could do whatever you wanted on the side. And there's still somewhat that, like, it's allowed for you to be queer as long as you aren't open about it, and as long as you still have the family and the kids for mom and dad.
And to bring this back to the ace panel, so we talked about the eldest son. The youngest son has figured out his brother is gay and is very much supportive of that. But he has his own stuff going on that he doesn't put words to, though he doesn't exactly hide it either. He gets asked out a lot. He's in middle school. He gets asked out a lot. He flat out refuses everyone. his idea of love is his relationship with his brother, not like that. Just his relationship with his brother and like the familial bonds they have. That's what he finds. That's how he defines love, and he is very comfortable with that. He doesn't really want anything more than that. So it is very much more like he is still, again, relatively young. He could grow up and change his mind. I didn't realize I was anywhere other than straight until I was in university. But also, it is very much ace-coded, and it is a very good, gentle ace-coding, even if it does not say the word.
Yeah.
Is love the answer? It's such a good comic. If the English cover actually has like the asexual flag on it, and it's such a good deep dive into asexuality. Our main character is just learning about asexuality himself, and it's just kind of like, oh, where am I on this spectrum? And actually, someone identifies as non-binary as well, although that's not really the topic at hand. And it's just a lot of queer bonding and diving into the different subjects and go ahead.
And Aces it's so good, so much nuance of what the queer community is. Again, we get some intergenerational bonding, which is so good, and again, passing on that queer community from the older to the younger generation. It has the absolute funniest scene where this Arrow Ace main character is asked to try to patch up a relationship for two of her allosexual friends, and she's like, okay, I can do this, and she comes up with like these questionnaires, and it has it like a legal proceeding. It's like, we're going to communicate, and by the end of it, her allosexual peers are like, you've made it very clear we don't want to be together, thanks. And she's like heartbroken by this, and she's like, no, I don't know what I did wrong. But it's amazing.
And there is multiple ace characters. The elders are also ace in this. The other boy in this picture is also asexual, which is a little bit rarer seeing male asexual characters. He prompts her to question a lot more than she would have otherwise, and they have a very unique relationship with each other throughout the comic. It is one volume. It is so worth getting. I honestly reread this regularly because I just love it that much.
It's so good. And the elders are in a marriage of convenience.
Yes,
right?
the elders are in a marriage of convenience.
So it's a fun look at that too, because she doesn't realize this is the thing you can do, and then she's like, wait, you're married, but you're ace and you're not, okay. She's really opening up the world.
A Romantic Killer is streaming on Netflix. It's so funny. It is a comedy. Basically, our main character is cursed by a wizard to become the shoujo heroine of everybody's dreams, except she does not want that, especially not when it's being coerced by a wizard who has taken away her 3 loves of chocolate, video games, and her cat.
Bruh.
And so she makes it her mission to foil this wizard's evil plot and will not go into the romantic side of things. It's never fully confirmed that she's aromantic, and they kind of play with the idea of oh, maybe she will someday, but in a funny way, in that she's using that as a loophole by the end. It's well, you can't say I won't fall in love one day, and it's very sweet. It's very funny. She reads as aromantic and bisexual to me, but that's a headcanon. There is a canonical, Arrow Ace character in the series. She does have some trigger warnings associated with her storyline episode, mainly around sexual assault. But she is the main character's best friend, and she is highly desired and does not want any of that attention. And she's subtle representation, but I find her to be very good representation. And the main character is nothing but supportive for her. There is nothing but like, you don't like romance, don't do it. Don't do it.
Main character's like, of course you don't have to. It doesn't matter what boys want, it matters what you want. Of course you're not interested in romance.
So even if wherever the main character falls along the spectrum, she is definitely good representation, and they are very like Arrow Ace friendly in this show, and it's very nice.
Case file of Julia Richards is also really good. It's a side character who is representation, but she uses the word, and she's really, really cool. And it's just fun little queer stories about jewels and mysteries. It started as a light novel series. It's got an absolutely gorgeous anime adaptation that's still streaming on Funny, I believe.
Funny's down.
Yeah,
Probably on
Crunchyroll, that's what I meant. And so if you've ever had any interest in jewelry or gems and you like quieter paced stories,
Or if you like didactic and sci-fi, Sherlock Holmes.
yes.
It's very much that.
Yeah.
I find that this series is a fairly ace-friendly series. It has queer. It's one of those shows where you're kind of like looking through it and like, but are they actually queer though? And I would say it's mostly remains implied, but the answer is yes. And they drop hints pretty regularly throughout, but it's a very subtle kind of representation. But especially with the side characters like her, it becomes a lot more explicit. And it's just good vibes. It has a little bit of a mystery element to some of the episodes, but not all of them.
Oremonogatari, it's a really sweet, really cute little rom-com between giant ox of a high school boy and this little cute girl that he falls in love with, and they are a very sweet but very hetero romance. But his childhood best friend, Suna, finds dating boring, has no interest in pursuing it, and just wants to watch what Takeo does with his relationship. And it does get into the fact that Suna takes this to the point of being dangerously self-sacrificing.
Takeo was Suna's first kiss. It was traumatic. It was also through cling film.
It definitely resonates. Suna's story resonates with a lot of Ace viewers, and it's very easy to read him as Ace, whether or not that was the intent. Finding aromantic representation without it being asexual representation is real hard. Real hard. Yes.
I have a question, actually. There are, and I'm not saying this is the equivalent at all, but I feel like there is some room to read certain characters that are like portrayed as horn dogs or like sleaze bags in a way, which is unflattering way to describe it. But there's a kind of portrayal of that I guess overlapped into aromanticism.
Yes,
And I think it
absolutely.
comes up quite often. As it like, has any search for aromantic characters led to you running into that?
Well, a great example of that was it Son Goku in Dragon Ball?
Yep.
Yeah. Goku in Dragon Ball is absolutely uninterested in any kind of romance, but has managed to have children with his wife. So,
But
Yeah.
kissing someone?
Yeah. Yeah, he's
But you're
probably the
married.
biggest name of someone who is aromantic, but definitely not asexual. But speaking of shonen, last time I gave this panel, Luffy, Arrow Ace King.
he wants food and friends, and that's it.
Oh, you forgot Parody Song.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
I want to add something about this zone.
Okay. Okay.
I might have to
I was thinking this, because Steven Universe, I was thinking Nerd Eye.
Yeah.
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 Like I know Arrow
was not thinking about anything. And I was like, I was really thinking about it when she was doing that thing. What was the
Fusion?
Okay, not fusion. But I was like when she was really into what was the thing that's
The TV show. Yeah.
Kind and Heart.
Yeah.
Hand, Kind and Heart.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
And I was thinking, I was like, oh, that sounds as hell.
And
Also hard.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, the garbage would be definitely. Another ace thing that we came across recently that hasn't made it into here yet is she loves to cook, she loves to eat. The main character, okay, there is a manga, the third volume just came out in English, and there's also a mini-series, and it's getting a second longer series. When I say mini-series, it's a TV drama. The episodes are 15 minutes each. There's 10 of them. You could watch it in the same amount of time you could watch any Marvel movie. The second season can be about twice as long. The main character is probably Demi and possibly Demi both, but definitely Sapphic cleaning. It is a Yuri manga. But there is a secondary character who meet in the third volume. Can he show up at the very end of the second one? I forget.
Nope.
Okay, it's the other one who may or may not be genderqueer who shows up at the end of the second one. In the third volume, you meet a side character who does not love to cook. And she is a lesbian and ace. So she's a card carrying and she's explaining what this is to the main character who, by the way, in the first volume took up like personality quiz, what is your sexuality? And it focuses on the word lesbian. But if you look closely, it's cisgender, something that ends in shul and then demi. So probably either ace or demi is what they were going for there, which is just really interesting if you look closely. And yeah, no, she reads as extremely demisexual. She's had no interest in getting with, there's a lot going into what the traditional household is and how not everyone necessarily wants that. But also, she says most of the lesbian experiences that she's read about since discovering she even might fall on that spectrum don't fit her either. So it's a very interesting take on that, and also some really good food porn.
Good thing you're at the end.
Yeah.
I just want to say, as someone who has a bachelor's in psychology, I really appreciate the time and the research you guys did on the course. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love digging into the
Yes.
I can see that.
I can see that.
Yes.
Agreed.
I believe he's canonically trans, but he is aro-ace. The only time he shows interest in someone is this perfectly average person. Yeah.
What series is that again?
The second K.
Second K. Yes.
Actually, I just thought about it from My Hero Academia. I don't know. Before I heard about the race of my own, I was really thinking that the racer was asexual.
Okay, you want to know that? Okay, all three of us are like, no, they are in a weird platonic relationship.
Before I heard about it, I was like, okay. First off, I wouldn't want to be with Miss Jones either. She sounds like a psychopath. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen her.
Yeah. Wait, we're talking about headcanons now. I agree with you. I also think Shinzo is also a purple. Got two hands here. You.
I think Settle Cyber for video.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, that is an amazing cosplay.
Oh yeah.
Like, screw the sex, he's got money.
Screw the sex, not that one.
Yeah. Any other hands?
Other recommendations, other people?
Sure. There.
Oh, there's time. I can talk about books.
And we can also talk about our experiences if that's also something you're interested in.
And just another Western character who, again, it's too early to really say, but we talked about Altaras and how he was probably, well, he's definitely described as the platonic ideal and very chaste, and it's just like, yeah, no, you're talking about an arrow-ace guy. But there is also a guy there who is very easy to read as aromantic but very sexual, Bauer. He has a mistress called, who's known as the Latin mistress. And essentially, yeah, no, they just like to have a good time together. They are very capital R romantic, and yeah, that's all about the sex. Yes.
No, you should put that in here. We want to talk about jazz. We talk about Big Bang Theory.
No, we don't talk about it. I can just stop a few bad representations. That is one of them.
That's just bad.
Yeah. Sherlock, I don't remember if they were intending it in the BBC Sherlock, but in Elementary, I think they tried to canonically say that he was asexual, and it's possible to still read him that way, but he does have sex a lot. And so it muddies the waters a little bit, but you can enjoy the cave but not want to live in it.
But not, no,
He has romantic relationships with a couple of people as well.
never mind.
So I wanted to mention the kind of group people want to find trope that came up a lot. The term of the Capcom asexual, where a lot of the protagonists at that company tend to not be interested in pursuing relationships and tend to be aromantic in nature, like Ryu from Street Fighter, or Mega Man, or Leon S. Kennedy, who's brought up as the new joke example of changing the name along.
I was like, Mark.
Yeah.
We also see the same thing about most shonen protags as we go to.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that joke come up a lot. I'm like, there's some, I think Ryu could be argued as one for sure.
You could definitely argue, and Ryu's a trope that does tend to be very easy to read as asexual, where he's just very focused on his martial arts, and nothing else matters except Ken.
That's kind of how
He doesn't want to be burdened with these unnecessary feelings.
He doesn't.
like people say that a lot about Zoro too, from One Piece.
Yeah.
Like he's so focused on just being
And it is very much a trope, and I mean that's the same trope that Algebra it falls into from Les Mis too, is just they have their thing and they go for it, and whether they're intended to be read as arrow ace or not, a lot of us will read them as arrow ace.
Especially when a lot of there's two guys who share a mistress. There's Bauer and his laughing mistress. We have lots of examples. We have a guy who's very horny into Algeras and keeps on being spurned. Like, especially amongst all of this, we get Algeras being described as very chaste, very platonic, cherubim ideal.
And I think part of it's that because of amatonormativity, we're expected to read this as like they're giving up something important to just focus on their task, their goal. Whereas us ace people are like, yeah, they just don't care. So that's why they're.
I'll just say Zoro is their platonic goal.
Zoro and Luffy are queer platonic goals. Kaito, then we'll work our way up to the front. Kaiba, sorry.
Another Yu-Gi-Oh character, you say Fudo from Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, there's a joke made that he's like, the only girlfriend he's ever gonna have is his buddy.
That's great. I have not seen 5Ds, but that's amazing.
He spends a lot of time with him.
You see, that would be problematic if it were Kamen Rider, but thankfully that's not Kamen Rider. There are some canon bicycles. Okay, to explain this, there is one point in Fuso PI, if you want an anime example, in which the sentence, "My husband is a motorcycle," is written down. Someone reads that and thinks, oh, she means that that her husband loves motorcycles. No, her husband can transform into a motorcycle.
Aizawa, and then over there.
Okay, so I actually have a book recommendation
Yes.
and another asexual character. I'll go for the asexual character first. I can't remember the name because I don't watch it as much, but there's like an actual kind of asexual man on Vogue. There's that. And
What show is it from? BoJack. Yes.
And a book recommendation, I actually got it, I didn't finish because I haven't finished it. Lost It. I actually found it during Friday, and I was like, huh, and I read it, and it was like, I think it was also made by someone that is in the asexual section.
Okay, cool.
I am going to steal just a minute to run through some of these books because they're real
We
good.
have one more hand though.
Okay, hand first, and then I'm going to steal a minute.
This is academic territory, but I know books, some books I like, John Shepard from Stargate Beyond.
Yes, a lot of people have been counting John Shepard as Ace, and I am fully there for it. These books all have canonical asexual characters. Every Heart a Doorway. Some people have some quibbles with it, but it was one of the first really mainstream award-winning books where we got a main character proudly identifying as aromantic asexual. I really love both Every Heart a Doorway and the series it spawned. It's basically kids who go through magic doors to other lands and then come back. They're traumatized by this, and there's a special school where they go to either to try to get over their trauma, or a lot of them want to get back to the worlds that they lost because they felt like they were more themselves there. Beyond the Black Door is a fun secondary world, asexual but not aromantic main character. Alazzo's really cool because it's written by a Native American author, and it digs into a lot of Native American mythos, and again, canonically asexual main character. All Systems Red is the first Murderbot novella. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room will love Murderbot. They are a asexual, aromantic, non-binary cyborg with severe PTSD who doesn't know what to do with themselves, so they just download a whole bunch of TV shows and stream them because they don't know how to go about fixing this traumatic system that they are caught in. This is in All Systems Red. They're a cyborg that was created by a company. They are considered property of the company, and they have a governor modulator in their head that is supposed to kill them if they don't obey orders. They disable it, but they don't know what to do, so they just stream TV shows while still following orders until they meet a research group from a little system that's not part of the corporation called Preservation Station, and it's the queerest bunch of scientists, and Murderbot very quickly goes from I don't care about anything to if anything happens to any of the scientists, I will kill everything on this planet and then myself. And it's an amazing series. And then Kaikeyi is really cool. It's a reimagining of the Ramayana from the point of view of the evil queen who gets Rama banished for a while. And she's canonically asexual, but she is in a very happy polyamorous marriage. She loves her husband, she loves his other wives, and then the gods f everything up. And so those are my boyfriends for these characters.
We have a minute left, so any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Book that involves someone that said that they were asexual and then they turn around and
There probably is. This is just a small percentage of the books featuring ace main characters, but I would not be surprised, and that's not an uncommon path to.
Again, it's perfectly fine if it's a phase, it's perfectly fine if it's not. So is pretty much everything else in life.
Identities are supposed to be helpful, not boxes that we get stuck in.
But if we fix, we fix.
I mean, again, it doesn't have a label, but Moving to You does go through the emotional journey of that.
Yeah, she very much has the, I'm ace, maybe? I was so happy being ace, why am I having these feelings?
That's exactly what happened. When I found out about it.
And sorry, what? Which one? Bloom Into You? Yeah, that's the manga series.
It's 8 volumes and complete.
Such a weird feeling that I was really like, you know, I'm glad that is actually like, you know,
And that
It's time.
brings us to time.
So thank you for coming.